For those who consider themselves followers of Jesus, we claim that all of us are sort of one in Christ, right? Paul wrote about this. He said, we are one body with many members. But let's be honest, come on, when it comes to Christians, doesn't it, sometimes seem that our Christian unity is sort of elusive? You know this. Too often Christians are known more for our fights, our disagreements, our theological squabbles, rather than for being united. Just maybe that's why way back when Jesus prayed in John chapter 17, my prayer is that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. Jesus prayed that as Christians, we would be one as Jesus was one with his Father in heaven. Of course, the problem is, ever since the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, we've had a hard time getting along with one another. Do you remember the first story of life outside of the Garden of Eden? Do you remember Cain and Abel? It's the story of one brother killing another. Folks, Christian unity is hard to come by. And here's what I think. There's a reason for it. And it's one more warning sign that we're unintentionally becoming accidental Pharisees. You see, too often as Christians, we confuse unity with its bogus counterfeit, uniformity. When my boys were young, we would cram them into the back seat of our car. And in the back seat of our car, I know this is shocking, they didn't always get along very well. On road trips, when they weren't occupied with their iPads, World War III would break out regularly in the back seats. Can anyone else relate to this? In fact, at times, these wonderful brothers wanted to kill each other, and honestly, at times I thought they might. But here's what I'd remind them. It's something I still remind them of. You two are stuck with each other. When your mom and your dad are dead and gone, the only person on this planet that you will be able to call family is your brother. You're stuck with each other. You don't have a choice in the matter. Nothing is ever going to change that. So can you learn to get along? It's the same way with those of you who call yourself Christian. I mean, we're family. It doesn't matter if we don't like each other, if we disagree about politics or theology or social issues or whatever the controversial hot topic of the day is, we are stuck with each other. And just like my boys, we have to learn to get along. Friends, we're united by Jesus, not by some choice. And nothing is ever going to change that. Friends, our unity is rooted in our relationship with Jesus. It's not dependent on sharing the same religious practices or preferences. It's not contingent on agreeing on every way we might interpret what Jesus said or how we might worship. It's not based on similarity or agreement. In fact, our unity exists even when we wish it didn't. Here's the truth. Uniformity is very different from unity. Uniformity is all about us being like clones, like those clone troopers in Star Wars movies. We all look, march, act in the same fashion. Uniformity suggests a clone-like similarity. And the reason this is appealing is that when everyone walks, talks, looks, behaves, votes the same, it's pretty easy to get along. There aren't so many issues to work through. It's easy to be kind and patient with a clone of yourself, because we understand each other. But the truth is, uniformity isn't what Jesus died for. Jesus, he didn't come to break down the dividing walls that separate Jews and Gentiles, slaves and free, women and men, so that we could become some homogeneous, boring facsimile of one another. Honestly, when we start to think that Christianity is about uniformity rather than unity, it's a sign we're unintentionally becoming an accidental Pharisee. Jesus didn't come to save us from our differences. In fact, it was God's desire for us to embrace the entire diversity of God's creation. That's why God sent his Son into this world. I mean, think about it. What if we were to start seeing our differences not as a problem, but as an essential part of God's great design? A God who's always working to grow our capacity to love, to include, and to accept others, just as Jesus did. As we close, I've got a couple questions for you. The first is, when have you been tempted to believe that uniformity is essential to the Christian life, for us to be the church? When are you tempted to believe that? And secondly, what would it look like for you to begin living out a Christianity that is based more in unity amid diversity rather than uniformity? What might that, if we all embraced it, do to the church? Folks, thanks so much for tuning in and for being part of this series that we've called Accidental Pharisees.